Welcome to Tamer Bowling Video Ball Reviews. We need your support, so if you like what we do, please support us by joining our Patreon page. Visit our partner pureatbowling.com and use the special code TAMER when making a purchase to be entered into a monthly drawing. I want to thank Limerick Bowl for their support. If you're in the area, don't forget to visit Limerick Bowl in Limerick, Pennsylvania. Hey Tamer Bowling fans, today we have this new Storm Gravity Evolve. We're testing it on a 40-foot medium house shot and 36-foot 2019 PBA Viper Pattern. First impressions, I recognize that gravity core. In practical today terms, the Evolve reminds me very much of the Crux Prime, but even more forward rolling. For value, we gave the Evolve a C+. This ball has the premium of the top of the line balls and doesn't immediately feel like the most versatile piece. For house shot, we gave it a B, and for sport shot, we gave it a B+. Storm continues with the spec cover, this time in that venerable Shape Lock HD core. I'll say that I do enjoy this core very much, but for me, the cover took a bit of that back-end bite away. That quicker response Storm is known for is not available with the spec cover. With that being said, perhaps the idea is to offer both quick and slower response balls to make the Storm lineup more versatile. The Physix is still around at that upper end as well. I'll say I'm used to that forward heavy roll from the previous gravity balls, but also combined with more response to friction, those previous balls were really good. The slower response cover in the spec means less backhand for me, so I have to be more direct, even more so than the all-road on house. When you combine an earlier roll with smoother downlane response, you get less motion overall. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a characteristic you need to understand about the Evolve. It wasn't hard at all to find the pocket, but I do find the spec cover to make these balls a lot more speed sensitive. If I want angle, I have to slow it down. If I target for angle, I get just a touch fast, it has no chance to recover. And that slowness down lane means you play to that shape. Tricking it just doesn't seem very effective unless that's your A game, and more on that later. Compared to the Pro Motion, it just seems that core shape matches the spec cover to allow for a big angle. So it seems smooth instead of slow, if that makes sense. Let me introduce James Kniffen as our high rev power tester for the Gravity Evolve. You'll immediately see that power players can overpower the pins and take advantage of that smoother, slower response. And James really straps on the ball, and with that, he really gets that heavy rolling core turning over. So while he strikes a ton, even when he doesn't, let's say, get it all, his speed and rev rate means slapping out the 10 via slow 6 pins or massive messengers the average bowler just doesn't get. You see how smooth the ball is, especially when he leaves a 2-pin a couple of times when he's a little too deep. James compared the Evolve to his Physix, and what he felt was that they're pretty close in overall shape, but the Evolve goes through the pins less consistently than the Physix. So again, I see that due to more responsiveness of the more traditional non-spec cover on the Physix. As you watch a few of his shots with the Physix, you'll actually see some over-under. So in this case, the Physix was actually too much ball, driving a bit too hard down lane, and hence the Evolve was actually a better look. So while it comes off the spot more consistently, the Physix was a bit too much ball for the pattern, making the Evolve the sort of better choice. Finally, Bryan tests, and again for him, he had to be more direct with the Evolve than the all-road. That earlier roll and smooth reaction meant the same for him as it did for me, less board coverage. However, when he got to the spot, just like I did, we took advantage of that heavy forward roll for good motion through the pins. He was surprised he could be so on top of the friction and still get motion. Usually the reactive balls are just too responsive straight in that friction. But where Bryan felt the ball came alive was that slow wheel. And like I mentioned, if you slow it down, the ball will respond for sure. And now you can see it being able to not only generate angle, but still drive heavy. So moving about an arrow deeper, even with that amount of surface, he can float the ball with an open launch angle and watch it just transition and drive so nicely. So again, if that's your A game, you'll likely be rewarded with great carry. We had a chance to test on the 36-foot 2019 PBA Viper Pattern, and this was an interesting juxtaposition. I mean, whereas the all-road was a bit jumpy down lane on this pattern, the bigger Gravity Evolve with the spec was so smooth it makes it a reasonable look actually on Viper. With the earlier chugginess and that smooth motion down lane, this is probably the ball I would want to use on this higher volume, shorter pattern. Control, control, control. For Bryan, it was quite similar. From more direct, it was a bit of a thread the needle, and once he paralleled left, in other words, catch more oil in the front and use less angle down lane, it looked great. On a pretty tough flat pattern, he felt this gave him a touch of room he really didn't have with hardly any other option in his bag. Final thoughts, I'm still trying to absorb the spec cover as it relates to the general Storm Roto lineup. In the end, it's crystal clear to me that the spec is a much slower response cover down lane, and this bodes well for control. So when you want to be more direct than an equivalently motored non-spec ball, let's say, the spec will always make more sense on tough patterns in that case. When you want more miss room side to side, especially on house, you might look the other direction. But if you use this type of ball, it really has to be the right condition and the right time to take it out. If you have slower ball speed, this ball can definitely generate more angle while staying smooth.
I need to tell you the one Tamer bowling ball reviews.